RugbyRenegade.com, the #1 online strength and conditioning program for rugby. Are you ready to get bigger, stronger, fitter, and faster and dominate your opposition? Welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast, where we build machines.
Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Rugby Renegade Podcast. My name's Jamie Bain and today I interview Nick Littlehales, the sports sleep coach. I met Nick a couple of years ago now when he visited Gloucester Rugby and gave a talk on how to improve sleep for performance. He's got, oodles of experience working with Team Sky in cycling, England football, and loads of other Premiership teams in football and rugby. And he just gives really practical advice on how to get the most out of your sleep. And as you might know, there's lots of research coming out about how important sleep is for improved performance, injury prevention and things like that. And I'm sure you're going to get some practical advice on how to do that. Also listen to the end because Nick kindly gives us, or Renegade podcast listeners, a discount at his website for loads of products that will help improve your sleep. So listen to the end and we'll give you that too. Hope you enjoy. Hi Nick, welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. Thanks for taking the time to come and speak to us about sleep.
It's my pleasure, Jamie.
Nick, just to start, tell us a bit about yourself, what you're currently doing, your involvement with sleep and some of the sports teams you've worked with in the past.
Yeah, I've been in the industry for some 30 odd years, previously as sales and marketing director for a big international betting company. And it was around 1998 when I sort of fell into the world of sport by accident, principally with the local club, football club to where I was working in Oldham, Manchester, which was Manchester United. I just became a bit disillusioned with the fact that sleep has always been clearly an important recovery process, but everybody took it for granted. It wasn't a performance criteria, so I thought sport must be doing something that the rest of us didn't know about. That turned out to be no, they weren't. I started to get engaged with the club simply because they were intrigued, particularly from the physio's point of view. So the first little thing I did was sort of to help with a lower back issue for one of their centre halves, Gary Pallister, and just looking at his product. Unlike most people, even today, he got it a bit wrong. So it was sort of, they came up with this word, debilitating rather than rehabilitating, when he was there. And it sort of started to develop a conversation in and around sleep and recovery and hotels and what players were buying to sleep on. And just generally, it started to happen. There's very few sports science people around then. Certainly, recovery was not something on everybody's agenda. And a lot of the new things, which I think a lot of people would be aware of, people like Sam Allardyce as a manager at Bolton was really trying to push the boundaries and was always thought to be a bit crazy doing that. But it's all changed now, hasn't it, Jamie? But along the route, a high-profile club like that, suddenly the paparazzi put two and two together, and those pampered Manchester United players have got a sleep coach who's tucking them in and reading them bedtime stories, no doubt. And really that's where the title stuck. And I got asked to do more things. Some of the players were in the England squad, so that triggered some interest from the physio at the time, Gary Lewin, who was also split between Arsenal Football Club. So my first sleep workshop with the first team at Arsenal at Colney was quite a scary one. They'd all been asked to come and listen to a sleep coach. So really weird territory in those days. Did a lot of work in the Euros 2004 with the England squad, completely stripping a hotel out. And one of the first times we actually sort of organised things for individual players, which rooms they were in, where the rooms were, taking product out there to improve what was in the hotels. So that was quite a significant point. But more recently, getting involved with British cycling around 2009-10, also the birth of Team Sky. And in and around that whole area, as a lot of people who like sport, read about sport, will know it was a new strategic approach around marginal gains, the aggregation of them, so every little thing adds up. And I got asked to provide some practical, interventions and techniques around sleep. Cyclists are pretty geeky. Recovery is massive for them. And as we went through a process, we even got to the point where I designed what was classed as a sleep kit, a series of layers and bedding and microfiber linen, all designed to tick all the boxes you want for sleeping: hypoallergenic, antibacterial, breathable. And we put those together with the riders. I designed some kit bags, and literally they went on the Grand Tours with them. So it's sort of a performance factor where familiarization was a key. So while the guys are in the peloton most of the day, they're already aware that in that hotel, whatever that hotel is, will be their sleep kit. We'll have put in air filters to clean the air out to make sure they can breathe right. So they were sort of far more confident that recovery was going to be. So it's one of those little factors, and they still do it today. I've just sent 30 plus kits in March. They were shipped out to Rio for British cycling, so they've all got their own kits because of the accommodation in Rio. So there's it's certainly come onto everybody's agenda at the moment, sleep. So I work across from archers to rowers to sailors to bobslayers in the Winter Olympics, right through to rugby union, rugby league, at all levels, BMX, cyclocross, because it's not. In some cases, the sports do have a difference because they're more, like rugby versus archery. But in general terms, it's all about a personalized recovery approach for an individual and how they can put that into their daily lives. Since the early 90s, mid-90s, there's been some seismic changes in the world that we live in. And I think what's going on right now, Jamie, is that we're having to redefine our approach to sleep, mental and physical recovery for this generation, because the demands and everything around it, you just can't take it for granted. You can't not treat it as some personal performance factor. So that's pretty much where we're up to at this moment in time.
Okay, well, that's not a bad CV to have, Man United, England, and Team Sky. Let's get down to the kind of the bare bones of it. Why is sleep so important? What's the kind of research say about the benefits of better sleep or longer sleep, or the difference between the two, and what are the consequences if people don't get it?
It should be a straightforward question, that, but I've been having I've recently writing a book. I've been having some detailed conversations with some leading people around the world in this particular area, and I think at the end of the day, you can pop into your browser and have a look around, and there's a lot of research, and our own experiences can tell us that what we're now starting to see is not just a refreshed feeling in the morning. You feel as though you've recovered, so that's a good sign. When you don't wake and you don't feel that, then you don't not do what you want to do that day. So when they all look at sleep, there's always this caveat at the bottom that we're still learning. We still don't know enough about it. And in recent, because we've got some tech in there and we can go a little bit deeper, we can see that there are chronotypes, genetic characteristics that we have, used to be called owls and larks, AMers and peers. It's actually something that's genetic. It's not something you create. They've looked at all sorts of things about sleeping longer, increased performance factors, or sleeping less. I think at the end of the day, even now, we're getting information that a poor sleep approach can even increase, type 2 diabetes, weight control, anxiety, depression, right on to now we've got schizophrenia, dementia. There's so many things now that are pointing towards that, because we, as a population, we were taking it for granted. The clinical side were clearly pointing to how important it is, but because we took it for granted, we were never really that focused on some of the consequences of it. But what we've got now, I've just done a recent program with with a group of clubs on a player welfare basis, and the red flags are coming up. There are people who are relationship breakdowns, worrying, stress, becoming addicted to certain things that they use, the increase on sleeping tablets into the system, and all of these various things are really bubbling up. So there's some significant long-term benefits if you get your sleep right in your early years and keep it going. But right now, I think the world is just so demanding. It's not from a negative point of view, is it, Jamie? We love it. We want to get every minute out of every day, and I'm sure our goal is to try and not sleep at all. Find a way to do it. Stop wasting this valuable time, because we could increase our life if we could get it down to something better. And the problem is, when you look into sleep, there were 5 major sleep cycles that for what we know, the human being has adopted. 4 of those were polyphasic, which is sleeping 2 or 3 times in a 24-hour period in shorter blocks. The 5th one is a monophasic one, which is sleeping just at night, all in one block. And that was principally triggered by the invention of the light bulb, allowing us to push the boundaries a little bit. And I think this generation, all my athletes that I work with and all the people I advise at any age, we are working in a polyphasic approach because that's what their schedules are doing to them anyway. But they didn't know what polyphasic meant. They don't know anything about the sort of story around sleep. So all I'm trying to do is give them things that we already know about, but they just didn't know about them, to use them to combat with these issues and problems. So that's about it, really.
Yeah. So talking about those or the things you teach your athletes, what are some of the basics or basic strategies people can apply now to improve their sleep?
I think one of the conversations we're having at the moment is because the tech's allowed us to move into the area of sleep with apps and wearables, monitoring that, and it just keeps getting better. I think there's a sort of zero to sleep hero situation's gone on. Is that almost up until probably a handful of years ago, we never measured sleep. We never talked about it. It might be a well-being questionnaire if you're lucky. Did you get 8 hours? Did you sleep okay? Yes. Carry on. And then we've got this tech available, which is available personally, and it produces data. We're not familiar with the data. We're not familiar with all the things it produces. So there's a danger that if somebody starts to measure their sleep using those things for the first time, not like heart rate or pulse, which is very familiar to everybody, but if they suddenly start looking at this data, they need to know what to, is it all right? Can I change it? Can I make it better? What makes it worse? And in a lot of cases, I see they bring them into the system, and if a group brings them in and spends quite a lot of money on the wearables and they don't have a strategy around it or they haven't thought about it carefully, they end up just ignoring the data. So what we always do is start with the basics. And I've just tried to, when you're talking to athletes across all sorts of different age groups and demographics, trying to redefine it for them. And one of the things we do is I've highlighted 7 key sleep recovery indicators, which in each of those 7 areas, if you go in and just educate, increase awareness, maybe make a change, put an intervention in, or just stop doing something, then there's a number of steps that somebody can take to remold how they approach sleep. And the way that looks is the first one is circadian rhythms. Most people know what sun up and sundown means, but very few, even today, at all levels, Jamie, don't have a real grasp of what the circadian rhythms are and how important they are to us as human beings. And so that's a first step for most, to just trying to understand that, because everything you do should be with the thought that you know about the circadian rhythms, you know about what they're doing, creating highest points of blood pressure, unsuppressing and suppressing bowel movements. All these various acts was all triggered by the shift of light and dark and temperature through our pineal gland, triggering all of these millions of cells and functions to do these sort of things within a normal 24-hour period. And if you get completely out of sync of that, because you're not aware of it, and most people aren't, you can make some significant gains if you just look at what you're doing now and seeing how coordinated that is with that natural process. The other one is knowing your chronotype. There's some great research now coming out. We've always known it. We've had owls and larks. We've got morning people, nighttime people. But for the first time, we're actually starting to do using data and cross-matching it. And you can clearly see that even when you've got two athletes, they're absolutely the same. They hit all the right numbers in every single way. But one's an AMer, one's a PMer. And that means at certain points in every day that they are going to be not as quite as alert as they should be, or they're moving from one phase to another. And we can clearly, it was a baseball, took a load of baseball players. We got Dr. Christopher Winter over in the US, took all the data from a load of baseball players, events and goals and fouls and things, and also took all the simple tests to identify chronotypes. And would you believe it? The PMers gave more fouls away in daytime matches, scored less goals, and vice versa. And it may only be sort of marginal in some cases, but knowing your chronotype, particularly in and around sport and everything that you're doing, you may not be able to change what's coming to you, but you're certainly knowing your chronotype, you can minimize its effects. And every day, every week, every year, make little steps towards making sure you're a little bit more in harmony with that chronotype, not fighting it all the time. The other one is thinking in cycles rather than hours. This 8-hour thing, which everybody just comes out with. But principally, sleep is measured in a 90-minute cycle. So that's when you flow through all the various different stages, not in any particular order. So I just use that to construct a sleep routine. And so you basically get a constant wake time. For me, that's 6:30. It's in harmony with the circadian process of sunup. It's in harmony with everything that might happen in my life. I'm a morning chronotype, so I want to get up early and get on with my day, because that's the best time of my day. So 6:30 is great for me. I wander back in 5 90-minute cycles. You've got 11 o'clock. And 5 90-minute cycles is 7.5 hours, which is pretty much, wherever you look, is what the human being requires as a recovery process in sleep in any 24 hours. That's what we sort of look at as the benchmark. So that is a 5-cycle routine. And you put either side that, a pre-sleep routine and a post-sleep routine. Routine's a bit scary, but it's actually just doing things to bring you from a sleep state in the morning so that you're fully awake and ready to go and not rush that. And the pre-sleep process, particularly in today's world, is quite key for moving you from awake state, moving towards that opportunity for you to go into a sleep state, and it's quite critical. So I use 11 till 6:30, but it also gives the athlete a series of timings. So we've got 9:30 into 11 is pre-sleep. We've got 11 till 12:30 is the first cycle. So I can actually use 12:30 till 6:30 as a 4-cycle routine. I can also use 2 into 6:30 as a 3-cycle routine, and so on. And so what we're actually doing with the athletes, we're looking at everything that's going on in their world, both personally and the sport. We look at how many target is per every 7-day period, because doesn't matter how far you look ahead and plan ahead, it's very much about what's in front of you is the reality. So as you look at the next 7 days and you look about all the key points when you're supposed to be doing things, as long as me and the coach can see that there is an opportunity to get 35 cycles or maybe 28 cycles, which is equivalent to 6 hours a day, not 7.5 hours a day, then if we can see the opportunities at night, that could be 4 cycles. We also grab one midday, which is the second natural sleep period. We can grab a 30-minute or 90-minute there, or even early evening, which is the third one, and a 30 or 90-minute one there. So what we're doing with everybody is we use cycles, not hours, thinking about recovery every 90 minutes. And we're literally using these 3 natural periods when we can go into sleep to just make sure we're getting enough cycles across the course of 7 days, rather than focusing on 8 hours a night. And the other ones are simple. Just finding a pre-sleep and post-sleep routine that athlete can do anywhere they're ever sleeping. Looking at keeping tabs on activity and recovery harmony, not to just keep busting it. Just really trying to focus on, you do a bit of recovery and a bit of activity, you've got a positive approach. Get it out of sync, and you'll be less productive. Won't go as fast as you would have done if you'd have just recovered a bit as well as done the activity. So that balance is there. And we coach about products, the sort of types of products that are good to sleep with and the types of products that are not, and the environments that we sleep in. And we very much sort of take a very simple view about those sort of areas, because it's almost like when they're performing in events, Jamie, it's normally they're in villages or they've moved from a training camp to hotels, and they're not at home. So there's always this danger of getting the home right and ticking all the boxes. But when you're in a hotel, you can't do that. So it's almost like, why is it that way around just before the Olympics? It should be the other way around. So the educational process, and all I do is 7 KSRIs. You're just going in there to educate, learn, take some of the myths away from things like mattresses that are supposed to give you a perfect night's sleep, when there's nobody on this planet could tell you what that is. So there's a lot of myths, there's a lot of misconceptions in sleep. A lot of marketeers sort of saying this is doing this and it'll change your life, when actually, if you don't know what the circadian rhythms are, if you don't know your chronotype, if you don't know that you can actually sleep in different ways, and I have actually got an athlete, you're going to laugh now, Jenny, but this is why I couldn't answer your question in the first place, that specifically about the importance of sleep, is there is an Uberman theory. Now, this is just something that was created, and that is sleeping for 20 minutes every 4 hours, 2 hours in 24. And you think, oh my God, but actually people have been very successful sleeping like that for years, without any particular side effects of any note. So just like a single-handed round-the-world sailor, there are human beings who can actually, for long periods of time, actually sleep on very little, because we're so robust. So the whole business about looking at things in cycles and hours is that you can really fine-tune. You do not want to be wasting the athlete's time, valuable time, sleeping without benefits. You can find out whether 4 cycles works just as good as 5. You can work out whether, if you split it up with midday or evening, naps, controlled recovery periods, you can actually really maximize the schedules better. And then suddenly you get this wave of confidence that they're thinking about mental and physical recovery periods, not sleep. They're thinking about doing it and in control of it. It can remain flexible because you're confident about getting it. And the coaches have a great place to be, because they can look at schedules and go, that athlete has an opportunity to get 30 cycles that week. We're happy with that. If they don't do it, that's up to them. But we can show them, and we know that they've been coached as well. So it's just instead of not necessarily coming up with something, wow, never heard that before, but it's actually just using everything that I've seen and experienced in the industry and picking all of those things out. And I said, well, you tell me I've got to need 8 hours at night, but what's this polyphasic approach that's the opposite? Well, that's just something we used to do. Well, why don't we do it now? Because of the light bulb. Well, it seems to make sense that. So it's kind of like I just got confused because, and sometimes I still get confused because we still really don't know what's going on here. But what we do know is that we're certainly uncovering how important it is to us, and that millennial, which is a new little world, but the millennial population born in the 20th century, 2000 onwards, they are coming through a world which is just almost unrecognizable, with these seismic changes, with how they approach things, what they do, how they gather information, the technology influence on them, which is all sorts of things. And that's where we're picking the next lot of athletes and players from. And so if we don't give them, because it's for them really, if we don't give them something that is far more tangible, makes more sense, it's logical, it's not restrictive, it makes more sense in their world, it gives them, a reason for recovering, then they're likely to not make the grade or burn out really quickly. Because some of the schedules we see in sport these days are just unbelievably crazy.
Yeah. We've touched on there the importance of thinking about it in cycles and for focus on as a recovery tool, which I think is a great way of putting it. In terms of that, so to catch up cycles, I know rugby players will be no stranger to having a nap. What's the best way to do that? You mentioned you could do a 30-minute nap or a 90-minute full cycle.
Yeah, I mean, it's for most people in the workplace, 90 minutes is just not in the question. But it's kind of like you do get the opportunities, maybe on a day off, or with athletes they've got the afternoon off, or away from training or whatever. But 30 minutes is that period which everybody's sort of comfortable with. That you literally just set an alarm for 30 minutes. You just find somewhere, that just ticks a few boxes. It's quiet-ish. It's somewhere that's maybe not where you're normally always active. That could be sat under a tree, on a bench, in a room. I've done it in the toilet, right? It's pretty scary. And I think once you start to get past the, not everybody, but certainly whenever we're on a train and we've got all our personal belongings around us, and we sort of, as soon as you sort of get this sort of repetitiveness, or you can put yourself into that particular mindset, bang, most of us will do it and have some sort of nap, drooling away, or even talking or whatever in an embarrassed situation with people we don't even know. So I think what you have to get into your head is you don't need, fancy $5,000 sleep pods. You don't need specialist rooms with music and water and essential oils and da-da-da-da-da. Principally, I could nap sat in front of you while you're talking to me. It's kind of like, when you're in that graveyard slot which is corporate thing, straight after lunch meeting, and you're in that room and everybody's there and we're all listening to tactics or whatever, and you just drift and you just come less conscious. You're there, but you've just gone down a level. So what you're doing is, strangely enough, I've just got a little polished stone, weird one, but that polished stone has some meaning to me, a family meaning to me. But it also, I just use it, it's a bit sort of like a meditative thing, is I use it that once I start doing that, where I'm sat, then literally I start to shut down. Right? I'm just totally comfortable to go to that place. So all you need to do is some people might use some mind space tech that sort of does a bit of that, takes them to a different place, or binaural beats and things. They might listen to some music, they might do this and like that. But principally, just get in, put the alarm on, shut your eyes, and just stare at that tree. Just look at that tree. And every time something comes into your head, just keep staring at the tree. And you'll either just drop off, you may not drop off, But whatever it is, it's recovery time. So you don't have to be curled up in a full-on sleep. But once you start getting that together, like you said, the rugby guys, boxers love it, is you do start going into a sleep state because you're comfortable to go into it because the alarm's on and you'll come out of it. And a good thing to do to give confidence that you're not going to drift or anything else, is if you just take a sort of shot of caffeine prior to your nap slot. It takes about 20 minutes to kick into your system. So when you do come out of the nap, you're feeling a bit more refreshed rather than feeling groggy from it.
Okay, that's a good tip.
So you start to get a better understanding about it, and it's more important. It's more important to think that I know between 1 and 3 there's an urge and a need to clash of sleep. I know that it's a circadian process. I can feel it. I can push on through if I want, but I know it's there. So around that time, and I start to feel it coming, then just put the alarm on, sit down, chill out, see what happens, come back again. And when a lot of players go home after morning training and they get in that graveyard slot 1 or whatever, they'll pass out on the sofa maybe and sleep for 3, 4, 5 hours because they're being forced to catch up when it's not in control. And I think what you always have to understand is that the sleep debt's there, of course, but it doesn't sort of go away. You have to work it out. So, and I mean, you have to work it out of your system. So every time, if I look at a week and I think, right, theoretically, I can only get 30 cycles in that, 30 cycles or 28, so that's 6 hours a day, but I'm doing it there. Well, the following week, I can get a block of 5 on that night, block of 5 on that night. I can do 4 with a nap that day, 4 with a nap that day, then I'm back on track, 5 and 5. So I've got 35 that week. I'm not looking to get 40. I'm not looking to get 50 to catch up by going to bed earlier or adding more cycles. It's just in any one period, we never do that anyway. So all I'm doing is sort of, that was a 30 cycle week, there's a 35, there's a 35, there's a 35, there's a 28, 26, not doing that. I need to shift things around. That's too low. So it's just a completely different mindset to it. And that's where napping and everything else comes in. Snooze, you lose? No. Recover to win.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned caffeine a little bit back there. Now, that's highlighted kind of a big issue for rugby players and other athletes. When they're playing night games, they're usually dosed up to the eyeballs on caffeine, and then they really struggle for sleep the following night. Now, based on what you said, would you just, they sleep whatever they do that night, and then, the following week they make sure their cycles are good, or is there some sort of strategy they could use to improve their sleep that night?
I was actually sort of in discussing this morning with this, and I think it's, I've been into places where they don't have any caffeine protocols or controls at all. It's sort of a general rule, to have some or to not have some. I think the first place everybody should go is that if you just do a little bit of research, tiny little bit of research, you will see a hell of a long list of everyday products that's got caffeine in, and not just your coffees and teas and things like that. And when you look at that list, have a look at what you're consuming, because if you just, like you would say, calories or whatever it might be, just see how many of those things are in your diet. Look for other things and just check it, because what you're trying to do is the sort of the medical guidelines is 300 to 400 milligrams because it's a positive thing, right? We like to have some in us because it does give that little bit of boost and enhancement. And if you've got around 300 to 400 in your body at any one time, that's fine. If you looked at what your intake was, and to give you an example, a sort of grande in Starbucks is 330 in one go. So there's military gum around, 100 milligrams in one chew being used. There are, we're a coffee culture, so a lot of athletes will spend more time in cafes chatting and relaxing and talking and about things. So more coffee going in. A lot of the decaffeinated products do have a little bit of caffeine in. You know, eating a chocolate cake, caffeine. You know, so pain management is a lot there. Energy drinks, a lot there. So it's very, very easy. And one project, it's very, very easy to suddenly find yourself over 1,000 milligrams, just like that, if you're not careful. Now, the point was, if you're not just making those little, because you're not doing caffeine tests on yourself, or there's a wearable that checks it. It's really just you being aware that its half-life is 6 to 7 hours. So if I've got 1 milligram, you know, at 12 o'clock midday, come 6 or 7 o'clock, it will have gone. And it'll have drifted down that process. So what happens when you go to sleep is there is a period of time where pretty much the caffeine that's in your body will go through its half-life. So it's kind of thinking like when you wake up, you are pretty clear of caffeine, right? So if you use that in your head, it won't have all gone, Jamie, but if you think that you've just spent 7 hours without any caffeine, so it should have gone away. So now you're going to give yourself some caffeine to boost. How much was that? 40 milligrams? How much was that? 50 milligrams? Suddenly you start to get a nice idea of it adding up in front of you. And knowing for a fact that all the people who sort of don't drink coffee, you know, after lunch or something like that, if they don't know what level of caffeine's in their body or what could be in their body, there's no point doing this, because if you start coming off caffeine, you know, early, mid-evening, then it's going to be difficult for you to sleep, you know, because it's like you're coming down off the hit, so you want to get hit again, and it can make it very difficult. And in a lot of cases, if the players are getting to that particular point where they're topping up before games, and then that's riding right through, it's almost like a lot of people I work with is I almost say to them, have you ever not slept and still got on with something and survived and did well? Of course I have. It happens all the time. Right then. What we do is we run into that game. We've got all the cycles in various places. We're shifting from 3 cycles, 2 in the midday, 2 there, 2 there. We have this mental consciousness of where the caffeine is. So we're going to use it in the right amount, because you've got about 300 milligrams in your body at the moment. We'll top it up with 100 milligrams just before the game to give you that burst. But hopefully by the time we get round to 2 o'clock, your half-life will have drifted down. You've got a good chance to get 2 or 3 cycles in there. Or just don't sleep at all. Because the time that they spend worrying about that process, when everything is high from the game, before the game, after the game, during the game, everything is just too high. Is actually they'd be better off just doing other mental and physical recovery activities and just cracking on with the following day and getting back on it. Because it happens all the time, but worrying about not sleeping is the whole process everybody has to get into the sort of head is it's all about what you do from the point of wake to the point of when you need to go to sleep again. You do not have any control over what's happening when you're in it. So it really changed the focus. I didn't sleep well last night. No, you had a bad day yesterday.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because, like say, it's that worry is almost the worst thing about it, because boys will go, I need my sleep to recover. They'll go to bed, and then they're still wired on the caffeine, and then they'll get even more stressed that they're not sleeping. It's kind of like a vicious cycle. So now they can just think about it. They can catch up those cycles later on, and use that time however they see fit.
Yeah, there's lots of things, because I think the way everybody is whether it's in their lives or not, is what we tend to do, because we don't go to the dentist every 6 months and talk about sleep. We don't have this regular relationship with sleep. Everything's so low. So what happens is we tend to do things in isolation. We just keep bashing on doing it. We don't really question when there are answers out there. And then what you do is, if you knock on the door of the doc, whether it's within the team or your local GP, they'll tell you to, improve your exercise, eat better, don't worry so much, and take some of these. And And as soon as somebody puts a pill in them, a sleeping tablet in a very controlled way to reset a serious problem, not a problem, but not to be taken. And then I'll just take it night before the game, the night after the game. I'll take it there when I don't feel like it. So what they're doing is overstimulating. They've got no real management going on in the background because they're still taking sleep for granted in that sense. And they start getting addicted to sleeping tablets. The cocktail becomes quite damaging. And, that's where a lot of people are just... It takes a long while for anybody to put their hand up and say, I'm really stressed, I'm really anxious, I'm really struggling in these particular mental areas. So you've got to as soon as you start seeing the flags, the schedules are high, what's your wellbeing program, get a coach in like me to talk to the players and get them confident about talking about it. Because once that happens, you've got a real chance of not letting it get out of hand. And so most of the time I end up going to clubs. A lot of the times, not in every area, but certainly rugby recently, Jamie, is because the doctors were giving out 1 bottle of sleeping tablets a year, and now it's 1,000.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the doctors say to the coaches, we can't do this. And they say, look, he's still performing well, he's still kicking goals, he seems happy as Larry, so give him the pills.
Yeah. I think it's also partly kind of our culture now. Is it? It's everyone looks for kind of the easy way out. They'd rather have a pill to fix it than actually sort things out properly.
Yeah.
Which isn't great.
But ultimately, it becomes a very negative. There's a lot of counterproductive side effects with sleeping tablets. There's so many on the market. Some of them you can even access without the doctor, and it just becomes it's just not a good place to be. So I actually stopped. All the guys in this rugby club that were actually taking tablets on the night before the game because they couldn't sleep because they were too up for the game, whether they play, whether they get injured, whether this will be the last game on the planet they'll ever do, all of those factors going on, but they knew they had to sleep, and I said, well, why? Stop sleeping. You don't need a tablet. Now that's scientific for you, isn't it? And he went, I didn't sleep last night, but I watched this really positive thing when I scored all those tries, which really gave me a good mindset. I did some meditation, did a bit of yoga. I actually did fall asleep for about 30, 40 minutes because I just passed out. And then I did this and I did this and I actually smashed it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I didn't need the pill.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know we're short of time, Nick, so thanks again for sharing all this information, and I think it's a great way to sort of think of it as using it as a recovery tool and not just having that that big block of 8 hours. That's a really good way to explain it to the players. And just where can people learn more about yourself, Nick?
It's just simply the website's sportsleepcoach.com. There's loads of we're posting stuff up all the time because I'm just fascinated by the subject. It's really great. So we've got lots of blogs up there. We're on all the social media channels, Twitter, whatever, constantly putting free content up there to help people. If anybody wants, if you wanted a particular code or something, Jamie, for your listeners to access things at a special rate, then you just say so and I'll set one up for you.
That'd be great, Nick. That'd be brilliant.
There's some... I'm always, if you sort of get sleep out of your head, we've got biohacks. I bet you use the tart cherries, do you?
Yeah.
Tart cherry, banana tea. There's the products like the Human Charger, the Rhino Med for nose breathing. There's some great books like The Oxygen Advantage, which is all about nose breathing, which is very much a part of what we do. So once you get all these basics right, then you can actually take things on the outside, like you guys use the cherries. You can bring cherries in, you can bring banana tea in, you can bring a Human Charger in, you can bring a Rhino Med turbine in. You can bring little things in, and it starts to give a much more rounded approach to it. So you've always got that. We've got coaching services and products and sleep kits and all sorts of stuff. Not designed for Premiership footballers, designed for young lottery-funded athletes so they can sleep with the right stuff and get educated in the right way. And that's it, really.
Cool, that's brilliant, Nick. We'll obviously share a link for that on the website. But thanks again. It's been really good.
A pleasure.
Cheers, Nick.
Thank you.
So there you go, some really practical tips to help you improve your sleep for rugby performance and to prevent injuries. I really like his kind of down-to-earth approach, back to basics, focus on your 90-minute cycles. You don't have to catch them up, the next night. You can catch them up over the week. Be flexible with it. And also not to worry about it. It's a big issue with players staying up all night after evening games when they've taken a lot of caffeine and getting stressed, but just kind of let it go and catch it up over the next week. So I think that's important. And as I said at the start of the podcast, Nick has kindly given us, or listeners to the podcast, a 20% discount off products on his website. All you have to do is at the checkout, put in the code capital R 90, and then rugby all in capitals, and you get 20% off any products that I'm sure will help you improve your sleep. In the meantime, keep checking out www.rugbyrenegade.com. Loads of articles coming, and of course more podcasts. And please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, whichever you prefer, and give us a really positive review. And we'll keep these coming. Speak to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. For more quality rugby strength and conditioning information, check us out at rugbyrenegade.com. Rugby Renegade, building machines.